What's going on, YouTube? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, YouTube? This Tilo for the parlay for your post fight reaction from the Errol Spence and Terence Crawford matchup in Las Vegas. We just finished watching, and if you hadn't seen the fight, you missed an amazing performance by Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, a guy who was not, he wasn't, they didn't think he would be a guy who could compete in the welterweight division at the top level. He's proven everyone wrong, and today beats the boogeyman of the division, as we would call him, Errol Spence Jr. Uh, man, going into this fight, guys, uh, it was a 50-50 fight. The consensus was 50-50. Guys were the incumbents and fans and most reporters, even reporters that don't know boxing as much, they most definitely had Terence Crawford winning. And as I as I as I look at this, I think about two things. You know, Terence Crawford is a guy who we would not respect because of his competition, because of his opponents, because of the things that we would see that Errol would have in his way that Terence would not have. And it's funny because looking at Terence Crawford, I was one of the biggest critique. I mean, I'm talking about I was one of the biggest critics of Terence. I mean, from his competition at junior welterweight up into welterweight. I mean, you couldn't really say names of his resume because you didn't know. Julio Gamboa was another one who I thought about, who was a big name, but then after that, you really couldn't name anybody. So off of his resume, off of Terence Crawford's, you know, opponents that he fought, also fighting David Benavidez's brother, who had one leg at the time. It's you just can't really give Terence the credit that Errol was getting because he was at welterweight and he was beating champions down and took all the belts except for the WBO belt, which tonight we did see that Terence Crawford kept the belt and took all of Errol's belts, and now is the first male athlete to take two divisions undisputed in boxing ever. A woman has done it before, but undisputed, the first male athlete ever to do it in two separate divisions. Terence Crawford is now your undisputed welterweight champion. And let's talk about the fight. Let's talk about the fight itself. Coming in, like I said, 50-50. You didn't know who was going to win based off of resume. Based off of just kind of the ability, off of the eye test. And round one was typical. I think we all knew that this would be a feel out round for both fighters. These guys were looking to feel each other out and see what was going to happen going forward. And after round two, you can see the speed difference. You can see Terence was intentionally not throwing, just taking his time and being as accurate as possible. And you look at the fight where it started, and it was that knockdown in round three where Terence threw a right jab. It was a right power jab. I mean, that was the telltale signs of what was to come, because Errol just fell, like, he fell hard. It was an amazing shot by Terence. He timed it perfectly, and right there's when you started to see that Errol did not look the same. Errol looks completely different. He looks smaller, number one. His reflexes weren't as great, but then also his speed was not Terence's speed. People forget Terence is fast. I forgot that Terence is fast. And then when you go from that round, you start to see just Errol just trying to pile on action, but Terence being accurate as possible. I mean, I was sitting there watching this fight and thinking to myself, like, does he miss? I mean, you couldn't even tell if he missed, because every time Errol would get hit, his head would cock back, or his body would move back. It was so weird to see that, because we all know that Errol Spence, out of boxing weight, is bigger than Terence Crawford. With that said, it really didn't matter, because later on in the fight, Terence Crawford continues knocking Errol Spence down. And he's catching him with right hook, double right hooks. The third one was a nasty left uppercut in between punches. I mean, Errol just had no answers for Terence Crawford trying to pile on. I mean, and Errol's trying to pile on that. It didn't even matter. Terence was so accurate. He was so fast. And finally, in round 9, referee stopped the fight. Errol was trying to take his break in that 9th round, was not throwing many punches. And you see there that basically Terence Crawford just opened up, and he made the referee stop the fight. The crazy thing about this, guys, and I was mentioning this to my cousin actually as I was watching the fight. Terence didn't even open up in this fight. He barely opened up. He barely did work. He barely did work. He was accurate. He was taking his time. He was picking his spots literally the whole fight. He picked the spots, and when he picked the spot, he was accurate. He was accurate as ever. And when he decides to open up, we clearly see what would happen. What would have happened. But could you imagine Terence opening up in round 3, 4, 5? This fight would have been done over with earlier than what we saw. And so Terence Crawford gets a stoppage there. He is now once again the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. But I do want to say this for everyone out there. As I just finished talking about the fight and talking about what we saw pre-fight and festivities from both camps and guys just being mad confident in what they were going to do. Errol Spence did not look okay. Errol Spence, first of all, he came in there looking smaller than Terence Crawford. I mean, I did not expect that. On top of that, Errol's his reflexes, his eye, the way he was getting pounded, and then after the fight, we listened to the interview. I don't know if y'all seen the interview at the end. Errol was, I know he's slurred words before. We understand, and he's from Texas, and I get all that. But Errol Spence, something's wrong. I feel like something is wrong with Errol Spence. Something was off tonight. It did not look like Errol. That did not look like the Errol that we know. Unfortunately, that's how I feel about it. I'm sorry, and I honestly feel like something was off. He will even wants. I mean, obviously, he gets the rematch. He is the loser, and so he wants to make that happen as soon as possible with good reason. But I just feel something is not right, man. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he wasn't training right, or maybe his nutritionist that we saw on All Access and Showtime wasn't doing the right thing. He didn't look big. He didn't look big. He moved up, but he didn't look big to me. And so something was off. I'm not trying to put an excuse for Errol, but it just didn't seem right. It doesn't look like the Errol Spence that we know. And I don't know. Something was off. But I don't want to discredit Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is a guy who, again, deserves what he has. He, again, took all the belts from Errol. He looked like a precise boxer. I was thinking about Terence Crawford and Floyd Mayweather during the fight. Like that's how I'm sure many of you were thinking that as well, for all you boxing fans. But I was thinking about Terence Crawford and Floyd Mayweather, how that would play out. I still think Floyd would edge that out. But it's just that's how great Terence was. So nothing to take away from Terence Crawford. He is that guy. He is the boogeyman in the division. That guy is the one, and I don't think anybody can beat him. But I really hope that Errol finds, I hope we find out if it just did not look okay. It didn't look okay. And I really hope that he is okay. And if he's fine, like I said, Terence Crawford gets all the credit in the world. He gets all the credit now in the world. I mean, he's that guy. And I am very impressed at what I saw with Terence Crawford. And so we finally see what happens tonight in Las Vegas. Once again, Terence Crawford, the undisputed welterweight champion of the world, taking all the 3 belts that Errol had. That would be the WBC, the IBF, and the WBO belts from Errol Spence. I am astonished to see the discrepancy in this fight. Errol Spence did not look elite. He looked pedestrian in this fight, and I really hope that it wasn't because something was wrong. But if, like I said, Terence Crawford proved to the world that he is the number 1 fighter at welterweight, and he's like 1-2 in a way, and top pound for pound champions. Man, fighters in the world, you have to put Terence at 1 or 2. You got to do it. So we'll see what happens. I'll have more reaction with Kendall Gill, who's obviously not here today. We'll talk about this fight in a later episode. So stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All the descriptions and the link in the description box right there. Everything, all our platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Check us out there as we continue to cover the world of boxing, and we'll see what happens with what's coming up in boxing in the big fights in the future. Once again, this is Tilo for the Parlay. Once again, congratulations, Terence Crawford, who is the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. We'll see you next time.